Okay, guys. Yeah, evening, everybody, and thank you and welcome back to the day two of the vulnerability management and patch management training. Thank you for returning. Thank you for joining yesterday. I believe that all of us, including myself, will learn something new, and I'm hoping that we would further learn some new stuff today. We built the foundation yesterday, and we're just going to be laying, we're going to be building more. Looking for the right one now to build more on that foundation. That's what we're going to be doing today. So there are a few things that I'm going to be talking about today for maybe some of you that are new to vulnerability management or just new entirely to the concept of cybersecurity. The few terminologies that I'm going to be using today that chances that you haven't heard about it before or it's just entirely new to you. So do not be afraid, okay? I would try as much as possible to use different examples to explain it, but just keep calm, ask questions. I would answer them. And so don't let it put it off. Don't let the terminology put you off because you're hearing about it for the first time, okay? So let's let's rock and roll. So this is where we're going to be starting today. I'm gonna put this down. So yeah. So if I take you back a little bit yesterday, so this is where we stopped. Yesterday we started talking about vulnerability scanning and penetration testing. And yesterday I did explain that you can't really separate both of them. Whilst you could work as a vulnerability management specialist or whatever title that the company decides to give it. You could be hired to work as a vulnerability management specialist. You could also be hired to work as a pen tester, okay? But if you're going to work as a pen tester or work within that space, then you have to learn vulnerability scanning. You have to learn vulnerability assessment. Okay, so hence I thought that it makes sense for me to compare both. All right, so hence we'd use this vulnerability scanning versus penetration testing. It's important to know that this training is not about penetration testing, because penetration testing itself is much more, the subject of penetration testing is much more deeper than this, all right? But like I said, if you're going to become a pen tester, then you have to learn vulnerability management. So for some of you, you might decide later in the future that you want to learn penetration testing, then you would have had a very, very good foundation in vulnerability management before going into penetration testing. So this is where we stopped yesterday and we started doing the comparison. And today we'll just continue from there. All right. So the question, this title now, this particular slide is there's a question. It said, is vulnerability scan or scanning and penetration testing related to each other? And what this picture kind of depicts is to compare both of them again, to see where they overlap, if there's any. And if you can look at the illustration that I have here, you can see that in this bubble here, you can see here vulnerability assessment or vulnerability scanning is non-intrusive, all right? But penetration testing, it is. Okay, so I was trying to explain the intrusiveness yesterday, and I said, the concept, of the house, the beautiful home that you have, and the threat agent, the door being the control. If you remember that yesterday, and I said that in pen testing, you are applying force, hence the word you exploit, okay? And when you apply force to a thing, chances are you could, damage that thing, so hence we can say, we can conclude that penetration testing is intrusive, all right? So that's the reason why the frequency at which you carry out penetration testing can be quite low, all right? The frequency is usually once in a year, or worst case scenario, maybe twice in a year, all right? You don't do it quite often. It's different to vulnerability scanning or vulnerability assessment that you do quite often, all right? Because one of the reasons is because of the intrusiveness of penetration testing, all right? So I hope that we are clear on that. Another, how they are also compare is, the focus, all right? So vulnerability assessment or scanning has a wider focus, okay? So wider focus in the sense of, in terms of the asset that you wanted to scan, all right? So if you think about a typical organization, and if you work with a very, very large organization, the number of assets that they would have, and when I say asset now, I'm talking about the servers, the website, the number of IP addresses that they have. It could be running into thousands sometimes, all right? So the scope, for vulnerability scanning is quite wide, okay? What you're scanning can be more than one. It could be up to 500. It could be up to 600. But the scope in penetration testing is narrow, all right? It is narrow. So you cannot at once pen test all of your assets, okay? It only makes sense that you pen test maybe a few of them. So it is narrow, the focus is narrow. Few assets you are pen testing per time. But when you're carrying out vulnerability scanning, you could scan all of your entire, IT asset per time, all right? Then we also said here that starting point for security, starting point for testing security, all right? And he says the advanced security testing. Yes, so because of the frequency for, when you carry out vulnerability scanning, you could always just assume that, it's non-intrusive. So it's the starting point of you just gathering information about your environment, okay? So you remember that we said vulnerability scanning is automated, all right? So you're gathering information. You're just trying to find out where the weakness is, all right? You're not actually, exploiting the weakness. So it is a starting point in your, security testing. Then the next one there says mix of interviews and tools, all right? And we have under penetration testing there, we have report on exploit, heavy use of security tools. So while I was in scanning, in vulnerability scanning, we do not exploit, all right? But in penetration testing, that's the reason why it's penetration testing anyway, we exploit, all right? We identify the vulnerability, then we press on, to see that, to test further whether we can actually take advantage of that vulnerability, all right? Tooling, when I say tools, the tools that you use in scanning can just be one or two. But in penetration testing, usually use different types of tools, all right? Pen testers will combine sometimes 2, 3, even 4, tools when they are carrying out their exploit, okay? So another thing that you need to know about penetration testing is the fact that it could, be white box, all right? So you can see here, there's something that we call, you see white box here. And you see where, you see this middle, you can see this is where both of them kind of overlap, all right? It kind of overlap. So let me before I go into the white box, the gray box, and also the the black box. If you take your focus away from this illustration, I want you to put your focus here. So this is just a few description. Well, not few. This is a description of those three subjects. So number one, black box. So black box just simply means no evidence provided whatsoever. all right? Gray means that some information provided with the same access as an employee with credential, for instance, all right? Then white, this include direction on what to do, code review, and etc. All right, so I need you to focus on me and so that we can do this together. So what that simply means is, so black just simply means black. All right, when somebody's in the dark, like you don't have a clue. All right, it can be penetration testing can be where you've been given you've been asked to carry out a test, but the person that asked you to carry out that test did not give you any information. So let me explain it further. So you can imagine if you got hired. No, you're not hired. You can imagine that you are an unethical hacker. So you are a cyber criminal. That's not you, but let's just imagine that that's you. All right, you are a cyber criminal. All right, so cyber criminal, they carry out unethical hacking. All right, and they play unethical hacking. They do more of what we call the black box testing, in the sense that if they wanted to hack Amazon, they won't go to Amazon for Amazon to give them information. So if they wanted to hack Amazon, www.amazon.co.uk or .com, all right? So that's a type of asset. Assuming that they wanted to attack that, they will usually conduct what we call the black box, all right? Because they do not, or they have not Amazon has not engaged them, to carry out ethical hacking. So I'm using different words now. So there is ethical hacking and there is unethical hacking. All right. I mean, we're all English students, so we understand what that is. Okay. So they would, because it's an unethical hacking, all right, they will carry this out, using the black box approach, in the sense that, Amazon would not have provided them any information. All right. Black box section. However, all right, Amazon can also approach a penetration testing organization, all right, to say, all right, organization B, can you carry out a pen test, all right, against our asset? Don't forget the asset here is www.amazon.co.uk, all right? Amazon can decide that, all right, the methodology or the approach that I want you to use is black box. I'm not going to provide you any information whatsoever about this asset, all right? Just go ahead and try to break the asset. Let me bring you back to the concept of the house, all right? So imagine that we said Tony Abalaji yesterday that has a very beautiful mansion, all right? This mansion, it has a lot of security in it. It has man guard at the gate. Tony has got, maybe Rottweiler, all right, at the gate as well. The house, very powerful because how big it is. It's got, a reinforced door, all right? The windows, they're also, solid, with metal. They've got different, preventive and detective control cameras, CCTV cameras everywhere. The fence, has also got barbed wire there as well. All right, please follow me carefully. I wanted to explain what this is. Has also got barbed wire. All right, then Tony goes to, Tony is so proud of what is God, well, maybe he's not even sure, how effective all of these physical controls that is got in place. Maybe it's not even, sure about them. It can ascertain how effective it is. So Tony now goes to company A. That company maybe is owned by maybe Alex, and says, Alex, all right, you run a security company. I want you to target my home. All right. I want you to target my home and see if you can actually circumvent the controls, break the controls and make an entrance into my house. All right. So it goes to, Alex's company. So Alex's company, deploy his own boys, to carry out an attack against, Tony's home. All right. But you see, Tony did not provide any information about, his house, this home to Alex. He just says, this is the home, this is the asset, is located at 112, blah, 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 blah address. All right, just go there, see if you can bypass the Rottweiler at the gate, see if you can break the scale the fence, the barbed wire, see if you can get to the front door, see if you can unlock it, see if you can break the windows and get into the house. So Tony did not provide any other information to Alex other than just go ahead and break the control. That is an example of black box. All right. Okay. So, but some tests can also be gray box as well. So the gray box is where some information is provided with the same access as an employee with credential, for instance. So in other words, Tony can also say, you know what, Alex, this is gray box now. Go target my home, all right? But I will give you certain information, okay? This is the address, all right? I've got CCTV. I've got a Rottweiler, all right? The door is made up of, this metal, blah, 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 blah. So it provides certain information. So if you want to get into the house, there's a side door, there's a side gate, there's a gate at the rear, so Tony provides certain information, all right, to Alex's company about the asset. All right, so that is gray box. All right, but however, the motive is for Alex's boys and his company again to break the control, but they have information. Don't forget the first one. He didn't tell Alex's company that they've got Rottweiler. Of course, you know what Rottweiler is. It didn't tell, he didn't go as far as that, giving all of those detailed information. All right. Then the third one is white box, includes direction. So white box is a combination of, all right, gray box, the information that you are provided, the information that you are provided, including direction on what to do, all right, code review, etc. All right. So the gray box, I've already explained it, but the white box now is further information. So Tony Abolaji says to Alex, okay, with all the information I provided you, with the knowledge of the Rottweiler, with the knowledge of how the gate is built, the front door and all of that. But this is how I intend for you to carry out, the test. All right, don't go through the window. I just want you to try break the front door. Don't attempt the window, just the front door. I want to see how powerful that door is. So once you circumvent this control board, the front door, this is how I want you to carry out that. So it is more specific in terms of what it wants the testing company to do. All right. So these are example of 3 types of testing methodology, all right, around penetration testing. So the point I'm trying to make there is when you're carrying out vulnerability assessment, it can be white box, all right? It can also be gray box as well. But vulnerability testing or vulnerability scanning can never be black box. Does that make sense? All right, give me a thumbs up if that makes sense to you. If that explanation makes sense to you. Rolling. I just want feedback, so before I move in. Yes. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So that makes sense. So vulnerability assessment or scanning can either be white, it can also be gray, okay, but it cannot be black. All right. But penetration testing can be 3. It can be white, it can be gray, it can also be black as well. All right. Thank you for that. So information gathering is another thing as well that is common to both of them. So when you're carrying out penetration testing, you will actually gather information. It's a requirement. All right. You gather information about the target, the asset that you wanted to hack. All right. In vulnerability scanning as well, you gather information. Now, what are the information that you will gather? You would ask for the name of the asset. You would ask for certain information like IP address. Okay, IP address are very, very important. All right, the name of the asset. So for example, now if you're going to scan a website, all right, you have to know the URL. So URL could be www.amazon.com.uk. All right, so that's part of the information gathering. You would also ask that what are the IP addresses? All right, whoever is sponsoring that test, whether vulnerability scan or penetration testing, they would also supply you with IP addresses as well, and so many other information that you might require. So it's part of information gathering. Obviously, two of them as well, you will use certain tools, all right? So vulnerability scanning, you will use likes of Qualys, Nexios, Akinetics, Rapid Scan. I'm still going to talk to you about that later. The same apply as well. Penetration testing, you will use combination of more than one tooling. All right, let's move on. Okay. Yeah, so all right, let's move on. So internal versus external vulnerability scan. Don't forget that we're talking about the subject here is about vulnerability scanning. All right, it is not penetration testing. But I thought that it is necessary for us to compare both of them. I think it's important that I remind you about that. Okay. So here we're going to be talking about, internal and external vulnerability scan. So what that just simply means is when you're carrying out a scan, you can carry out a scan from inside and you can carry out a scan from outside. All right. So if you notice here in my my notes, sorry, in the slide here, I said PCI DSS require 2 independent scans. I want you to note PCI DSS. As a matter of fact, if you remember yesterday, I was teaching you about what sometimes necessitate vulnerability scan. And we said vulnerability scan can actually be necessitated by regulation. And among some of the regulation that we talked about yesterday was PCI DSS, GDPR. We set standard like ISO 27001. We also talked about EPA as well. Do you guys remember that? Do you remember? Give me a thumbs up if you remember. Do you guys remember? All right. So PCI DSS requires, all right, that if you're a company and you take payment or you process, you process sensitive information like 16-digit credit or debit card number, all right, if you process such information, then, it becomes necessary for you to carry out regular vulnerability scan. As a matter of fact, PCI DSS mandate that your regular scan, your scanning should be carried out both internal and also external as well, all right? So an external vulnerability scan is performed outside of your network, all right? E.g., at your network perimeter. Please focus here. I use the word perimeter, all right? I want you to note that word, all right? And it identifies known weakness in network structure, all right? So what is a perimeter? Again, let me take you back to the concept of the house. Tony Abolaji owns a powerful mansion, and we said by reason of how valuable this asset is, this gentleman decides to put around a fence, very, very tall fence, to protect the asset. All right. So sometimes when you fence your property around, it could mean so many things. Number one is to protect your asset. Maybe if there's a structure, all right, there. When I say structure, I'm talking about a house now. All right. It could mean that you just want to use it, all right, to protect, all right, the house, so that, you protect it from external attack. But sometimes it could also mean that sometimes when you put out a fence there, you're trying to secure the property. You would, I mean, most of us are from Africa. We understand what I'm talking about. If you put out a fence there, you're securing so sometimes you have not started building. You don't have a house there already. You don't have a structure, but you put the fence there, so that you can secure the property. All right, it becomes like a deterrent, to anybody that wanted to encroach on your property, the landed property. Okay, I know you're getting it. So you see, if you have like a plot of land or two, all right, and you do not have a structure in that land. When you put the fence, you have secured your property. So anything outside of that 2 plot, all right, is not yours, all right? So that fence is your perimeter, all right, is the perimeter protecting, all right, your asset. The same is true in networking as well, all right? So in network, there are 2 concepts, all right? We have what we call the local area network. We also have the wide area network, and we have so many other ones. I'm not going to go into networking. I'm just trying to explain perimeter, all right? So if you work in an organization, for example, and you go to work and you use your laptop and you connect, and you know, these days that most of us work from home, before now you will go to the office, isn't it? As a matter of fact, in some of the offices, you will see all of your cable, the Ethernet cable that is connecting your laptop, maybe to your hub or to your switches. You see everything flying around. All right. So in your organization, you would have a local area network. All right. So logically, the router, all right, through, the router is usually like a gateway through which you would, hop into the internet. And maybe the firewall and a few other network gadgets. They will provide a perimeter, all right, for your network, all right, just as the fence provide a kind of perimeter, for the structure and the property, all right? So what is essentially saying here is, if you're carrying out a scan, all right, if you're carrying out an external vulnerability scan, when you're scanning your environment, guess what? You are outside of the perimeter, and you are scanning from outside of the perimeter, all right? But the other one is internal. So it means that you are scanning from inside of your network, all right? You would agree with me, Tony Abolaji, your property. If someone is outside of your environment, all right, sorry, not outside, if they're outside of your property, all right, with the big fence, there is limits to what they can see, because number one, you already have a tall fence protecting your property, all right? They may be able to see part of the property, but they may not be able to see everything, all right? But if someone is inside, they could have a better view of that property compared to somebody that is outside. They would have a different viewpoint. That's what I'm trying to say, by reason of the perimeter. So when you're scanning internally, you are inside and you're scanning. But when you're scanning externally, you are outside, all right? And you're scanning that environment, all right? So internal vulnerability scan is performed within the network, and it looks at other hosts on the same network to identify internal vulnerabilities. Is somebody catching this concept? Are you with me? All right, so think of your environment, all right, as a house. This is just for explanation. External, think about your environment as a house, your network environment as a house. So external vulnerability scanning is like checking to see if doors and windows are locked. Because if you're outside with the big perimeter, you can see the windows, whether they are locked or not. You might not be able to see the door, all right, because the perimeter, all right, the fence will kind of, shield it away from you. While internal vulnerability scanning is like testing if the bedroom or bathroom door are locked, because when you're inside, you have a different view entirely. All right, I'm glad that you're following this. I'm even enjoying it as well. One thing that is important for me, well, not important, is I enjoy my own training. All right, so when I'm teaching you, I'm enjoying it. So I hope it's the same for you as well. So what I've done is to further explain this concept of inside and outside, or internal or external. So I use this illustration to explain it further. So what you can see here is a corporate network, all right? And you can see on the left-hand side, external scan, all right? So this is you have a view. See, if you look at this this little gray box here, you could liken this to your perimeter, all right? So this perimeter is what actually demarcates the inside from the outside. But when you're scanning, from outside, you would have a different view, and that's an external scan. And this is you're scanning from the inside. I hope this just further explain what I am talking about. Let's move on quickly. So what are the benefits of internal and external scan? All right, so the whole thing about this internal and external scan, I think what I'm trying to teach you here is when you get your job as a vulnerability management specialist, you would be performing this role. You would have to scan your network from both internal and external, all right? I think that's just the whole idea, all right? So you have to perform both internal and external, but you see, they have different objectives. I think that's very, very important. In an interview, they want to understand. So when I say objective, it could be the benefit as well. Why do we have to scan from inside? Why not scan from outside alone? All right. Why do we have to do that? Don't forget that when you're scanning from inside, there are people that works for that organization. They will know the server room. The same way in Tony Abolaji's home, Tony could be so boxed up. He would have driver, he would have cleaner, he would have house help, he would have everything. And these individuals that work for Tony, they would have access to the bedroom as well. They would have access to the kitchen area. They would have access to the red door and all of that, okay? But someone that is outside, maybe your man guard, they may not have access, to all of those doors, all right, because of someone that is just a bystander or someone that is just walking past, all right, or a neighbor that is not living, in that property, they will not have such access. So what are the benefits or the objectives of internal and external scan? So there are a number of benefits that comes from performing internal and external scan. By performing both scan on regular basis, you're taking a proactive approach to protect your network from known vulnerabilities. So for example, internal scanning can also provide insight to patch management process, okay? I want you to note that when you scan internally, you would be able to identify, some of your servers, that does not have the latest patch. All right, give me a sec, gentlemen. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so you may not, you will be able to identify, some of the software that you use in your organization that does not have the latest patch. You remember I said yesterday, we use Microsoft as an example. So Microsoft has suite of product, all right? They have, some of you, maybe you're using Windows 10 on your laptop. Others might be using, if you have a server, they might be using Windows 2019, Windows 2020, and all of those, suite of product. But Microsoft is just Microsoft suite of product is known for vulnerability. So that's why the frequency at which we scan any Microsoft product is high. Because you're constantly scanning to identify, security holes, and also to identify that if any of the servers do not have the latest patch. You see, the internal scan would help you to identify that. The external scan will show weakness in your network that could lead to potential incident like cyber hacking, all right? You see, there are two types of threat actors, all right? I mean, there are different types of threat actors, but there's this threat actor that we call it inside malicious employee, all right? So inside malicious employee are those people that works for the organization, but their motives are wrong. All right. If you watch most of the old movie, you probably know what I'm talking about. All right. So you could have inside malicious employee, all right, working in that organization. So Tony Abolaji, you could have your megad, your cook and all of that, but they may have malicious intent. Okay. They may have malicious intent, or, or someone that is outside of the organization as well, or someone that does not live in the same property, they could also have malicious intent. So with external scan, it gives you a view of who is most likely, not who is most likely, but it gives you a view of the weakness in your asset that someone that is outside that organization, external to it, can take advantage of. You can also identify any services or new servers that has been set up since the last scan and identify if they present any new threat to your organization. So the whole idea about external scan is you are constantly checking if there is any weakness in your asset or in your control that cyber criminals, can take advantage of. Again, let me take you to the concept of the house. So you can imagine that, Abolaji, you decide to hire someone that on a regular basis, if your property is on an acre, maybe 1 acre of a land, acre is massive, for people that are into property. Then you now hire someone that, on a daily basis, they carry out a patrol. All right, they will patrol maybe with their dog. So they will patrol the perimeter of that, of that property. They keep going around. Do you know why they do that? They're just constantly checking, to ensure that, some bad people has not, gone to hide, maybe in the daytime, so that they can strike in the night. They keep patrolling to ensure that maybe the perimeter, your fence is not broken. All right, that is what external scan is doing. All right, so when they do that, they're scanning the environment, keep going around to see that, oh, all right, massive property. I hope somebody has not, broken the fence yet. All right, because from internet you might not be able to see it, because this your property is so big, it's so massive, so but you now have to hire someone, to keep going around with their patrol dog. When they do that, they are carrying out an external scan, and what they are trying to do from this explanation here is they are trying to identify if there's any weakness on the control, that cyber criminals can take advantage of, maybe in the nighttime or anytime. All right, so that is what an external scan is all about. Of course, there are so many other benefits of it as well. So question for you, how often should internal and external scan be performed? All right, can you quickly answer that question for me in 2 minutes? 1 minute. How often, guys? Nelson says on a regular basis. Nelson, you're using my word against me, yeah? On a regular basis. Okay, yeah, great. Jumoke says weekly. All right. Shug said at the time. All right, I don't understand. At the time of what? Chris said daily. Babatunde says quarterly. All right. Weekly, Lily. Depend on the organizational risk appetite. Okay, Tosi has just finished all. All right, okay. But great stuff, everybody. You did well, weekly, daily, and all of that. If you've been asked that question, okay, and even if you had said regularly, all right, regularly is kind of, it covers everything, daily, weekly, and all of that. If you had said regularly, interviewer most times, they will probe further to check whether you understand. They just want to know if the answer you gave, you know why you have given that answer. All right. So it's important for us, to always at all time, to explain our thoughts. So regularly can be correct. It could be quite vague as well. All right. But if you go on to now say, all right, yeah, I would do this based on the appetite of the risk appetite of that organization. So remember the house, all right? If that house now, if what millions, and they look at, they understand what they stand to lose by burglary or someone intruding into the property, maybe the frequency at which they will carry that out, will be quite often. You know what I mean? They will do it like every other day. So if, that property, there's a high profile person there, maybe the president lives there, all right? They can't be doing it weekly. They will do it like every other minute. You know what I mean? So it depends on the risk appetite. So like I said, if you attend a day or two or frequently, just make sure that you can provide, further information, to support your response or answer. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Let's look at some of the pros and the cons of vulnerability scanning, all right? So again, this little table explains it, all right? So I'm just gonna walk you through it just quickly. So the pros of the vulnerability scanning is it's quick, high-level look at possible vulnerabilities. Yes, it can be quite quick. It doesn't take a long time. That is the truth for vulnerability scan. In fact, you can, when you scan an asset now, in the split of seconds, boom, your result is out. It's very, very quick. All right. But one of the cons is, the drawback is false positive. I want you to note the word false positive. All right. That is very, very important in vulnerability assessment or vulnerability management. Okay. False positive. All right. So the other one is very affordable compared to penetration testing. That is true. As a matter of fact, there is a lot of freebies, free toolings, free vulnerabilities toolings, in the world that you can use. They may not be perfect, but at least to a large extent, you can use it to carry out a scan against your asset. Also, the licensed one is not too expensive or overly expensive as well. So it is affordable. All right. Penetration testing is not. All right. Penetration testing will cost you money. All right. So what are the cons? Businesses must manually check each vulnerability before testing again. Yeah, it can be quite resource intensive, because if you have a large estate where you are scanning about 10,000 assets, it's not a joke. Where we come from, they say it's not yams. All right. It is not a joke. Because it will just require, it will just mean that you have to, you can imagine 10,000 record. You're scanning 10,000 asset IP addresses. So each asset can have up to 500 vulnerabilities. So if you multiply 500 across 10,000, you can imagine your report will be humongous. It will be like too much. But you see, in vulnerability scanning, you have the responsibility as an analyst, all right, to review that report. So it can be time consuming as well. All right. Is anybody skilled in Excel here? Excel, Microsoft Excel. Anybody? Anybody? Microsoft Excel, Tableau, or PowerPoint, or Power BI, no PowerPoint, apologies. Olive, Patrick. Any other person? Olive, how good are you? I mean, don't worry. How proficient are you, Olive? Would you say you're a guru? I know you, Olive, so and that's the reason why I'm picking on you. Would you say you're like, you're proficient, you're with Excel? Okay, choose. Olive? Power BI. All right. Okay, Olive is not coming back. All right, that's fine. Ole. Okay, that's fine. So the reason why I ask is, you see, if you know Power BI, or you can use Excel very well, maybe, okay, intermediate level. All right, you could use Excel very well. You would find, I'm not saying you will not find vulnerability, not that you'll find vulnerability management easy, but it's a skill, and I will recommend it. And part of what we're going to be doing is, for some of you that will subscribe, to the full pack in terms of the training, that you would also get the opportunity to be trained on Power BI and also Excel as well. So talking about report earlier on, one of the things that is required for you as a vulnerability management specialist is you must understand, you must be able to slice and dice your report. You must be able to analyze your report. So when I say slice and dice, you're just analyzing your report. But you see, most of your reporting format, in terms of the report of your vulnerability scan, will come in CSV. Some of you must have seen CSV. But guys, do you know what CSV is? CSV? Is it CSV or CVS? CSV, so I don't confuse people. Yeah, okay. So it will usually come in that format, okay? So if you understand a bit about Excel or a bit about Power BI, let's not even go to Power BI now, because Power BI is just a glorified Excel, all right? So if you understand a bit of that, then it would help you, because if you have a lot of records of report that has come back, because some of you, I suspect that when you secure a job, you'll be working for a large organization with more than maybe 10,000 assets, all right? And one of the areas of challenge, I'm telling you, because I've worked for so many organizations, as a vulnerability specialist, a senior guy there. And one of the areas, the most challenging areas, is when the report comes back after that you've done your scan, you have the responsibility to analyze it. Well, how do you analyze note of record? All right, it will come in the CSV. Then you have to understand, how to create a pivot table and look up, using Excel. All right, so that is where it becomes a little bit cumbersome. But I'm just telling you that that's one thing that's a skill that is useful, very, very useful in vulnerability management. And the whole idea is for as many that will subscribe for this would also help you in that area as well. Let's move on quickly. Automatic, all right, can be automated to run weekly and monthly scan. That is true as well. Like I said, scanning is automated, all right? You could, once you understand it, you could set your scan to run, anytime you want. You could set it to run at a particular time. I did a piece of work for a wealth management some times ago, and I remember that they've got presence across so many countries. All right, we've got something in Asia, in Singapore, here in London, in Africa, and everywhere. And I was the lead vulnerability management specialist. All right, okay, I don't have to go to Singapore to run my scan. All right, I already have the scan there on the network. I will set it at a particular time, the Singapore time, all right, to run. It is automated. It runs, and I get the report when I come back to work in the morning. I get the report, then I start to analyze it, okay? So anywhere in the world, I don't have to be physically there or be awake, to run a scan. You could automate it the way you want, all right? So that's one of the good thing as well. The cons is does not confirm vulnerability is possible to exploit. Absolutely. So vulnerability scan is not penetration testing. All right. So you only just identify the vulnerability. You do not confirm, or you cannot confirm whether you can exploit them or not. The only way you can confirm it is when you carry out penetration testing. Okay. Let's move on. All right, so remember I talked about false positive. I want you to listen carefully on this one because these are usually interview questions, all right, for some of you that will leave here and just want to make a career out of this, all right? There are two main types of vulnerability errors, all right? So we have what we call the false positive. We also have what we call the false negative, all right? So a false positive occurs when a scanning tool, a web application firewall, or intrusion prevention system, all right, incorrectly flag security vulnerability during software testing, all right? False positive describe the situation where a test case failed, but in actuality, there is no bug or functionality that is working, there's no bug and functionality is working, correctly. So you could liken false positive to, a false alarm, all right? So, most of us, we live here in the UK, your alarm goes off, all right? Alarm goes off sometimes when the battery in the alarm, system is worn out, or when the battery is gone, all right, it's low on battery, the alarm will trip, all right? And that does not mean that you have suffered a burglary attack. That is that's another way to actually explain what false positive is, all right? So in the case of the alarm, there is no burglary. So false positive in web application, again, is when a web application security scanner indicates that there is a vulnerability on the website. But in the actual sense, or in actuality, there is no such vulnerability. Okay, you understand that? False negative, all right, is the opposite of false positive. It's like telling you that you do not have a vulnerability when in fact you do. All right, can I ask you a question? So false positive and false negative, which one do you think is more serious? False positive and false negative, which one do you think is more serious? Tony said negative. 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 Okay. Oh, someone said positive. Better safe than sorry. Okay, all right. I think the majority got it right. All right. Is negative. Negative is much more dangerous, than positive. All right. So negative is they are telling you that you do not have a vulnerability when in the actual fact, you do. All right. Okay. So when in the actual fact, you do. But let's move on quickly. So false positive and false negative can also be called type 1 error or type 2. All right. So I thought that, I should just include this to the slide. I've already explained it anyway. So in case, you're reading a text or you go for an interview and they started talking using this lingua type 1 and type 2 in vulnerability management, you just know that they are talking about false positive and false negative. So type 1 error, false positive, type 2 error, false negative. And I've already explained it. But the challenge, with the type 1, which is the false positive, is the fact that it creates a lot of noise and result in an unnecessary remediation work. All right. So you can get in an interview and they wanted to understand your knowledge. They will say, oh, so false positive, what is it? And you tell them what is it. Then of course, you don't stop there by telling them what false positive is. They can say, so how do you deal with false positives in your organization? All right. So, or what do you think? What do you think? So somebody will not say, oh, what is false positive? Or they can just say, oh, what do you think about it? So they are not expecting you to just tell you or tell them the description of the definition. They expect you to explain it a little bit further. And the moment you start to talk about that, it creates a lot of noise and result in an unnecessary remediation work. They will nod their head and say, yeah, this is a good girl, good boy. This is the person that we want to hire. All right. So it creates noise and it results in an unnecessary remediation work. Let me give you just a little bit, bring you in and just explain what that means. So remember I said earlier on that, imagine you work for a large organization, and in that organization, you are scanning 10,000, assets, all right? And each asset, all right, maybe is returning 500 errors. If you times 500, all right, against 10,000 assets is a lot. Your record will be like this, okay? It will just go over the roof in terms of your, scan result, okay? But you can imagine that if 2 or 3% of the result that is being generated, all right, by the scanner is false positives, work 2% out across, the record that you have. So you mean that, the result that you're getting has a whole lot of noise, and it will require you. So in fact, so something is already fundamentally wrong with your result anyway. So you can imagine that, you're dealing with a result that is wrong and you're trying to fix the problem. All right. A lot of noise and a lot of, remediation effort will be required. Don't forget that your responsibility as a vulnerability management specialist is to scan the environment and identify the vulnerability. That is where your work stop, and that is where your work start and stop. Someone else usually fix the problem. All right. I'm hoping that I'm going to show you RACE matrix as it relates to vulnerability scanning or vulnerability management. Hopefully, I'll be able to do that. All right. Or maybe for some of you that's going to sign up for the course, then we can show you some other stuff. All right. You'll be able to see your role. Okay, so you don't walk to an interview now and say, oh yeah, I'll do the scan and we'll go and fix it. Well, maybe if you work for a smaller organization, you might be involved in the fix. But in reality, all right, where you have proper separation of duty, you shouldn't be involved in the fix. Someone else should fix that problem. Those that are going to be fixing the problem will be the IT team. All right, you would take your result and give it to them, they'll go and fix it. But the point I'm trying to make here is, it will require a lot of work for them, to fix something that is not necessarily wrong, because the result is flawed from day one, because there's a whole lot of, type 1 error, which is false positives. All right. The false negative, like I said, we've already explained that where vulnerability is present, but it is not identified. That one is even much more, serious. And I think we've asked that question and you have answered it, correctly. All right. So let's look at, impact of false positives across software development lifecycle. I want you to give me your total attention here, all right? Because I'm taking you now. So everything I've been talking about, the example I've been using earlier on is pretty much around, I've been using network, all right? I talked about firewall, routers, and blah, 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 blah. All right. But you see, when I was writing my training notes and putting this together, of course, I do a lot of research as well because I understand the market and where the market is going. All right. So I realized that if everything you know about vulnerability scanning or vulnerability management is just mainly around network, you'll be able to get a job. All right. Fair enough. That's fine. But you see, if you have extra knowledge around how vulnerability management or vulnerability scanning or testing, is done, within the software development life cycle, you will be better. All right. So it means that you have more knowledge, and the amount of job that you can apply for, the scope would have even be wider because you have increased your knowledge. So I decided that I would have had a lot around application, all right, security into my vulnerability management training. All right. So you guys are very lucky, all right, because yeah, no, you're getting this for free, but count yourself blessed, okay? Because I'm sharing some new stuff with you that I haven't shared with anybody before. All right. So let's look at the impact of false positive across software development lifecycle, all right, which is the SDLC. All right. So the impact of false positive across software development lifecycle. So I want you to think about has anybody been involved in application development? When I say involved, you're not a developer, but you've just been involved in application development before. Yes, no? Let me know. Anybody? Olive says yes. No. So we talk about anybody? Yeah, let's make this interactive. Yes or no? No. No. Yes. No. Okay. I get it. I get it. Thank you. I just wanted to gauge your knowledge. All right. But it's if you've been involved before, that's fine. I don't know what level, whether you've been involved in developing a web application or you were involved in developing a mobile application. Okay. Yeah, so whatever it is. But you see, the times and season is changing, all right? Especially with COVID now, where we tend to do a lot of work from home, all right? So traditionally, the way software is developed, that traditional way of developing software, but a lot is now changing at the moment. As a matter of fact, modern software development or web application development, it relies heavily on what we call integration and also automation as well. All right. And there is this concept that we call continuous integration and continuous delivery. As a matter of fact, some of you must have heard about DevOps. Has anybody heard about DevOps? DevOps? Anybody? All right, maybe some people have heard about it. Some of you must have also heard about, CI, / CD, which is the continuous integration and also the continuous delivery as well. Please do not run away, because I said it earlier on that I'm going to be sharing certain things that it might be a new concept to a lot of people. Don't worry, you will get it. There's something I'm also going to be giving. January is for me, it's all about just giving, giving to humanity, giving to you guys. And take note of this. On the 29th of January, by God's grace, I'm not me, but one of my, I have a specialist that work for us. Take notes. This is just, we're going to be teaching what we call automation in cloud. Automation in cloud on the 29th. Take note, as a Saturday. I would send an invite out. I mean, if you want to come, that's fine. But that automation in cloud, what I'm teaching here today, the gentleman who's going to come, is just going to further help, to expatiate on it. Okay. We're going to be talking about modern, software or web application development, the way they do it at the moment. And this concept of continuous integration and continuous delivery, we will talk about it in more detail. So I'm not going to be talking about it in details now because it's just way beyond the scope of this training. But I thought that I would touch on it so that when you come back, for as many that desire to learn more, then you would be able to learn it more and ask, questions. All right. So we use the CI/CD, in modern software development. And the reason is just very simple. All right. I was talking about COVID earlier on and how times and seasons are changing, that most of us work from home, and the way software is being developed now, I suppose when it was being developed, several years ago, is different. All right, so you heard about cloud native application. All right, so most of the app now, they sit within the cloud environment. It wasn't so like that. It wasn't like that before. We consume a lot of app on our phone. We have VPN app that we can use to connect, to the back end in our office. It wasn't like that before. So a lot has changed. So hence the way software is being developed has also changed and as well. So, but the point I'm trying to make there, that this has also influenced, the way we now carry out security testing, all right, and on all of this software, okay? It has also influenced. So we don't do it traditionally the way we do it before. We have to do this testing in a modern way. And I'm going to be coming back to that later. But what is the takeaway here? The takeaway here is know that, there is a different way of carrying out web application development, all right, which relies heavily on integration and also automation. And what that simply means is we now start to use the continuous integration and also the continuous delivery. And hence, the way we do security or security testing of this application is different, okay? But let me now take you back, all right, to false positive, all right? So we know what false positive is, but now we're talking about it as it relates to software development lifecycle, all right? So as system and application grow, the number of false positive can rapidly increase and place a serious burden on developers and security team, all right? Developers are the people that will develop the application, with negative consequences for the development process, application security, and business. All right, and this could result, in type 1 and type 2. So the point I'm trying to make here is when you have a whole lot of false positives, all right, in the result that you get when you even scan an application, it would impact, all right, on the delivery of the project. Some people have worked in this software development, you would understand what is called agile, agile and all of that, where, the way things are done, software, are developed is quite spontaneous and also rapid as well, all right, because you quickly want to develop this product and get it into the market as soon as possible. So if, you think about the speed that you develop this product and get it out into the marketplace, and you have a tool that you're using to run a scan against that application, and you're getting a whole lot of false positive, it would have a negative impact on the development work, from the developer side of things. It would also have a negative impact on the security team. So that's what this is all about. False positive in scanning draws would also introduce unnecessary additional work into the highly automated development pipeline. I want to note the word pipeline, all right? So some people that are into software development, you probably understand this. And it would also undermine the entire development team as well, all right? Again, this is pretty much around the effect, all right, of false positive, when it comes to, software development life cycle. So I have this beautiful diagram here, or this illustration, which talks about the consequences of false positive for development process, okay? And the reason why, like I said earlier on, the reason why I just move a little bit away, from network is I just want you to learn something pretty much a little bit different, all right? That would, again, give you that edge when you're applying, for role. So the consequences, again, when you look at what I have here, is that the vulnerability scanner report on issues, all right? So dealing with real vulnerabilities and dealing with false vulnerabilities, all right? Developers will fix the issue. The application is rescanned to ensure the issue is gone away, absolutely. You normally, so in the entire vulnerability management lifecycle, which I'm going to show you later, when you carry out a scan, you identify the problem, you take it to the IT team to fix. Once they fix it, you will do another rescan to actually confirm that that vulnerability is gone away. All right. Then the result, the issue has provably resolved. You have actually solved the issue. But it is opposite and it's different when it is false positives. See, on false positive here, the vulnerability scanner will report the issue. Yeah, but it is false. The developer will try to locate the issue and eventually give up. So it is tiring. All right. So you're trying to find a fault, which is negative from the get-go. All right. A developer would dismiss the issue as a false alarm. The vulnerability scanner still report the issue because when you scan again, the same issue, we keep reoccurring. We keep reoccurring. The security team sends the issue, back to the developer. The developer has to convince the security team that it was false alarm. The vulnerability scanner continues to report similar issue in the future. Result: the issue is not provable or resolved. Developer and the security staff would have wasted time and now everyone would distrust this scanner. All right, so let's talk to each other. If you find yourself in this situation, because these are, questions that they ask at workplace or interview, they can give this scenario. They can ask you, what would you do? All right, what would you do if you have false positives and it keeps just going back and forth? What would you do? How would you solve the problem of false positives? Anybody? Let's see. How would you solve the problem of false positive? Anybody? Someone says review the use cases. That one is create a tag. Engage. It's coming for escalate the issue to the software developer. Have a baseline. Okay. Tune the scanner to cancel the noise. I like that one. I like that one, Nee. I like that one, actually. That one was spot on. Nee must be a guru. Nee Ola Lekon. All right. Any other person? I like that one. Let's take note of that. Tune the scanner to cancel the noise. I like that one. Any other one? Have a baseline. The baseline there is so I suspect what you're talking about, Tosin, is minimum. You want to set, have a pen test done. Olive said, have a pen test done. Olive, you're not too far-fetched. Keep sending it in. Ensure scanner signature are updated. Oh, Tony, okay. Okay, yeah, signature updated. I like that one as well. Makes sense. Engage baseline treatment. Olu says request for deferral pending the resolution of the scanner. Yeah, this is really good. I like what I'm hearing here. Yeah, I like that, Olu, as well. Tony, thanks for that signature. Not bad. Use another scanner to validate, document it, and move forward. Jacob, nice one. I like that one. I like that one. Use another scanner. I hope we're scrolling up here. Alex, can you hear me? Alex? Oh, Alex is not there. I don't know if any of our staff is here. Just give me a sec. Alex is here. Okay, maybe your noise is your background. Alex, can you type something, please? If you're here, I just need to you to do something for me. Can you confirm if you're here? All right, you're muted. All right, do me a favor. I like some of the responses I'm getting. I want you to kind of, document it for me. We will put it all together and we will send it back, to everybody that's on the call. I would confirm that you heard me and you're going to do what I've asked you to do. Can you confirm, please? Yeah, sure. All right. So update the plugin before scanning. All right. Can you take note of that? All right. Olatile says identify that particular issue to stop the noise and ignore. All right. Take note of that as well. Use another scanner to validate, document it. And I can't see the other one. Yeah, this is Jacob. Can you document that one as well? Request for deferral pending the resolution. Okay. All right. This is Olu Awuga. Yeah, document that one as well. Tony, ensure signature scanner are updated. Take note of that one as well. Tune the scanner to cancel the noise. Ni Olalikon, take note of that as well. You said engage another set of scanner to validate the issue. Yes, you should document that one. Tony Abolaji said escalate the issue to the software. No, they've already said they are tired, so you can't send it back to them. Okay. So take note of all of those ones that I called out. Please, can you confirm that you've taken notes before I move on? Okay, thank you. And those ones that if you've taken note of that, please, I want you to just get everything and post it back here because I want everybody to take note of it. All right. There's some very, very good ones there. Please, thank you. It's very, very important. All right. Yes, those ones that I called out. All right. If you're being asked questions, particularly around how you're going to deal with false positive, all right, those ones that I called out, they are correct. Okay. You can have a conversation. You see, there is no one correct answer. All right. But they're not wrong, but you can have a conversation around it. Okay. So thank you for to everyone that that tried. It was good. It was good to test your knowledge. All right. So, and I put a question here and you have answered it. Okay. So one of it, like I said, update the signature. Updating the signature, like I said, yeah, you can have a conversation around it. Using the multiple tools and techniques for vulnerability identification, and not to assume a clean result from just a single tool could make a whole lot of sense. All right. And that's why most organizations, when they are investing in a tool or when they wanted to buy two, they go for more than one. All right. I would also show you the importance of the role that false negative, no, the role that false positives, all right, play when you're making a decision about the toolings that you wanted to use or purchase for your organization. I'm going to be showing you that. Please hold that. That's why I'm really excited about what I'm showing you, because these are the things that you need to know. And once you understand it, forget it, you'll get a job. All right. So multiple toolings would work, okay? Because there is no one perfect tool, okay? So how important is accuracy to selecting vulnerability scanning tool? How important it is? So when we talk about false positive and false negatives, what we're essentially saying is, all right, there's some level of discrepancies in what the tool is reporting and what we're supposed to have. All right. So issue of accuracy, is that what we're talking about? All right. So my question to you is, how important is accuracy to now selecting vulnerability tooling? Has anybody heard about Gartner here? Gartner? Some of you must have heard about it. Gartner, has anybody heard about Gartner? Yeah, Tony. Any other person? All right, Tony, do me a favor. Take the URL of the garden and just put it there for some people that have not heard about it. All right. Take the URL and just post it. Thank you, Tony. All right. So Gartner, what they do, and not just Gartner alone, there's Target Security, there's a few others that are out there, is they provide an independent, unbiased view about security product. All right. So they can tell you that this product, they've assessed it, and this product is rated blah 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 blah. All right. They can say this other product, they've assessed it against this criteria, and they're rating it. They're the market leader. This one is not the market leader. And they have different criteria. One of the criteria sometimes that they use to evaluate products is they call it, I'm looking for the right one now. They evaluate based on price. They evaluate based on what customers are saying about the product. They also evaluate sometimes based on the technology. All right, if the technology is futuristic, you know what I mean. So you can imagine that you have a product that is all AI driven or machine learning driven. All right, so they also evaluate product on that basis as well. All right, but you see, in your own lifetime as a vulnerability management specialist, when you get this job, all right, you will work for an organization that will require that you go to the marketplace, all right, and purchase for them a vulnerability management tool. All right, and most times you will have to carry out research. All right, you will rely on information that you gathered about the product on the internet. As a matter of fact, you could go to Gartner website and look at what Gartner said about a particular product. All right, in this side of the world now, when you have an RFP that you want to put out, you could have identified maybe one or two companies that you wanted them to participate in that RFP. You would have done a bit of research about them. You put out the questions, questionnaire across, they would answer it, then you start to bring them in, do the elimination, then you do a proof of concept for them. For me now, I've worked in few places where I've actually had to help them to implement vulnerability scanner from ground up, where I went to the marketplace, I did a proof of concept, I put the result through to the management, and they made a decision on which one they preferred over the other. Of course, I would make recommendations, but the decision mostly lies with the management. All right, so this is where I'm going. So when you're making that decision, there's few criteria. Some people will say requirement that you use that criteria to determine or to judge which vendor or which product is better than the other. Among them could be, particularly for vulnerability scanner, could be, can the scanner perform automated scan and alerting? All right. So can you do automated scan? This day and age that everybody works from home, automated scan just makes a whole lot of sense. You don't want to be doing things manually. That could be one criteria. Other criteria could be centrally manage the scanner and the agent. All right. So the word agent, just hold that thought, because I'm going to be coming back to it pretty much later. Can the scanner clearly identify vulnerability severity level in the dashboard display and also report as well? All right. Scanner will normally report vulnerability to you, but the report could be in different formats. The report could be in CSV. You could have it in HTML. You could have it in XML. You could have your report in PDF. You don't have a report in Word, but you could have different format. All right. So if formatting or the format of the report is important to your organization, so that could be the basis upon which you would judge the vendor again. All right. The other one is track vulnerability over time, such as those deemed low or moderate risk. Again, tracking of vulnerability end to end, and where the vulnerability management will come in. And you could list all of these nice criteria upon which you want to determine, all right, or decide which vendor or which product that you want to buy. But more importantly, this is where I'm going to. Among all of these nice, fanciful things that you're using to make a decision, vulnerability signature update, ease of use, support for client and mobile, enterprise future, pricing and licensing, support, among every other thing, because you can get into an interview, they know that all of these features they are good, but they vary across organizations. Some organizations would they have all the money, so they could buy any product. All right, they are not at enterprise level. They're just a medium-sized organization. They don't consume mobile, cloud or native cloud application or mobile. All right, so, but one thing that is the most important is accuracy. All right, so if anybody asks you this question, you may have talked about every other thing that I've just said, but one of the most important one is accuracy. It's important to find out how the scanner is rated for accuracy. The most important matrix, the most important criteria, the most important requirement, as well as reliability, scalability, and reporting as well. All right, accuracy is the most important. All right, is the one that is the superior of them all. So like I said, that organization would different. But you see, because I tell you that accuracy is important because now you understand that, listen, if you have a false positive, all right, result, think about it in a large organization. Your organization, they're just going to throw the scanner away. I've worked in some organization, Jesus Christ, guess what? The moment the IT guys notice that your report is not accurate, guess what? They will start to blame you. There's nothing that you can do. You put your report, they won't even look at it. They won't even look at it because they know that the report is accurate. Then I've worked with a lot of very funny people. They will begin to doubt your report. No, you're not the owner of the scanner. You're not the one that developed the product. You know what I mean? But all the blame, they will shift it on you. They will shift all the blame on you. That no, they can't even, if you call them to a meeting, they won't come. Because they've spotted, that the scanner report a whole lot of false positives. Is this making sense to us? I'm really excited what I'm showing you, to be honest. I'm giving you some nice insight that could help you in your career. Is this helping at all? Let me feel your pulse, if this is really helping you. Yeah, it's important. All right. I'm glad that you do. All right, let's move on. We have a lot to cover today. So we've talked about vulnerability scan. We've compared it to penetration testing. We're going into a bit of software development life cycle. I came back out because I don't really want to let some of you run away. But I know you're enjoying it. So let's move on now. So let's now talk about assessment. All right. So vulnerability assessment is basically a major process that comprises of a range of different sub-processes. Okay. It is a process. So the key word there is a process. Okay. It is a process. All right. Scanning is automated. You may not necessarily have a process in place to carry out a scan, but you cannot carry out vulnerability assessment without a process. All right. So vulnerability assessment basically deal with identification. You can see that if you look at my slide, I purposely, colored and also, bold some text there. It comprises of identification, quantification, as well as the ranking of different vulnerability that might be present within a system. So when it comes to assessment, all right, you're not just only identifying the weakness. Now you're quantifying it. You're giving it number. All right, is a record. How many? Do we have 1 million of them? You're also ranking it as well. When I say ranking it, you're not ranking it manually. All right. The system would have helped you to rank it, but you are analyzing it, you're slicing and you're dicing the report. You're looking at those that are critical. You're looking at those that are high. I'm talking about severity level now. You're looking at those that are medium and those that are low. All right. You're putting it in a different rank because it would help with the remediation. Vulnerability assessment process comprises of several steps. The first step in vulnerability assessment is to catalog all of your different assets as well as the capability of the system. I noted that word catalog. All right, catalog. Everybody know what catalog is. All right, and also the capability of the system. All right. You see, cataloging your asset is not your cup of tea. All right, it is not your responsibility. That's why having a racing matrix developed around vulnerability management is very, very important, because if you do not have it, you will be overwhelmed with work. So I'll give you an example. I work for an organization, and in that organization, they have a lot of record. It's manufacturing. So they have a lot of assets running over to about over 10,000. All right. So they have different cloud instances. Not to talk about various data centers that they have. All right, running. And one of the major challenge, I'm still going to talk about, the challenges in vulnerability management. One of the major challenge is, you see, if the asset is not properly, the asset in that organization, if those assets are not properly labeled, you would have a problem when it comes to reporting. You will have a problem. So when you get a job in vulnerability scanning and maybe your day one day, you've noticed that, oh, in this place, they do not have, you start to ask questions about, oh, so, where are your assets? Do you have an asset record? All right, do you have, and the asset record could just be their CMDB or a database where do you have it? Is it all properly labeled? Blah, 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 blah. And they can't answer that question. That is the beginning of a problem. Because when you now start to report, you can't, not that you can't rank the severity, but the problem is you might not be able, to prioritize, how you fix your problem, because there's no proper catalog of the asset. You don't even know where the assets are. That could be another challenge. All right. So, but is it cataloging, or labeling the asset is not your work. Where there is proper separation of duty, the IT team or network team should have done that. All right. But that is not usually the case. Even if you work for a massive organization, you find that they don't do all of those things. That's the reason why they've hired you anyway. All right. And the capability of the system as well. Capability just means how critical they are. Systems varies in terms of the importance. Some assets are quite important than the other. All right. So again, this is where, cataloging comes in place, where you label your asset properly and you rank them on the basis of their importance to the organization. All right. Does everybody understand when I say capabilities and importance? Does that make sense to you? Guys, importance, capability? All right. You see, I had colored this one in red. I said, then a quantifiable value such as a rank is given to each different asset or resource in order to be able to estimate their importance to the company. Again, this is not your work. The IT team, all right, or whoever owns the asset should have done this ranking. The point I'm trying to make here is, if you go into an organization, in some places, they will just want to make everything your work, all right? But if you understand this concept that I'm teaching you, you can push back a little bit, all right? Or you can help the organization. Or you see, they may not even have this concept of cataloging. You can go there and say, oh, do you have an asset register? You can start to have a dialogue in that area. And when you start to have that conversation, they will say, yeah, good boy, this one is intelligent. He knows what he's talking about. And you can strike a conversation that could even help them, to do, their asset management properly. All right. Then a thorough vulnerability scan is carried out on a different resource that has been cataloged in order to determine where most of the vulnerability lies. Vulnerability assessment also deals with remediation work, remedial situation, as it helps in the mitigation and also elimination of different kinds of serious vulnerability that might be found within the system linked to its most valuable resource. All right. So everything I've said here, okay, just remember that assessment, vulnerability assessment, is a process. All right, scanning is not necessarily you don't necessarily have to have a process in place before you scan. But when you start to talk about, assessment, there must be a whole process, and it starts with you, identifying, the asset, and number two, quantifying, those assets, ranking them in different, vulnerability. Then it goes on and on and on, even to the point of remediation. So what I have done, to just further help you, to understand this is I put this illustration here. So you can see the vulnerability assessment, the long green arrow. Then we also have, the other one, vulnerability scanning underneath. Automated process that identify weakness in the system, identification, blah, 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 blah. So I'm sure you got that. All right. So again, vulnerability scanning and assessment, I've already talked about it. I'm going to move on quickly here. So scanning, spot all the OS vulnerability, third-party vulnerabilities, and zero-day vulnerabilities. Assessment, understand the impact of the threat, prioritize the vulnerabilities based on Severity, I want you to know that prioritization could be based on severity, it could be based on age, it could be based on exploit code, disclosure, patch availability, and various infographics from timely risk remediation. So when you're prioritizing your vulnerability, I'm still going to come back to this later and I will explain it. I just want you to note it, that when you're prioritizing how you will fix a problem, there are so many things that you have to put into consideration. These are also interview questions as well, all right? And an interview, they will say, okay, we have this massive vulnerability. Where do we start from? How do we fix it? In other words, what they're asking is, how do we prioritize, the fixing of this vulnerability? And like I said there, you could prioritize based on severity. You could prioritize based on the age of vulnerability. You could prioritize based on the exploit, code that is on the wide or patch availability. I'm going to explain that pretty much later. Let's move on quickly. You get the concept now, all right? So types of vulnerability, assessment, you could have the network-based, host-based, wireless network scan, web application scan. You could do all sort of scan. All right. So you could scan your network. You could scan. So when we say host, we're talking about your workstation, your laptop, your desktop, your servers. You're scanning them. Wireless, all of your wireless network. Your wireless sensors. If you go to offices area, you have different wireless sensors. Most of these, Cisco product. You could scan them as well. Then you could also scan, the website of your organization. All right. So what is vulnerability management? So don't forget, let me quickly take you back. We started by learning about vulnerability scan, then we moved to vulnerability assessment. Now we're talking about vulnerability management. All right. So what is management? Vulnerability management is a process to determine whether to eliminate. I want you to note that word, whether to eliminate. Just bear with me, guys. Just bear with me. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So it's the process to determine whether to eliminate. So don't forget that I was telling you about what an assessment is. You pick up the result, you quantify and all of those, but you see, in management, you are making a decision now. All right. This is my vulnerability record. My vulnerability result is too much. All right. So I'm asking the question that's under management. I'm asking the question, what do I do? All right. Do I eliminate? Do I eliminate? Do I mitigate? All right. Or do I tolerate the vulnerability based upon risk and the cost associated to fixing the vulnerability? So it's not all vulnerability that is fixable. All right. Yeah, yes. So sometimes not all the vulnerabilities you can't fix them because there might just be some challenges, with it. If you try to fix them, you might end up breaking something. All right. Or you know what, in software development, you might end up breaking something. The cost of fixing them might be too high. All right. In fixing that problem. Let me give you an example. So imagine, I'm not going to use Tony Abolaji now. Let's look for someone else. Let's say, because Tony will become rich very soon. Let's say Afolabi. All right. Let's say Afolabi Olukoju. All right. Let's say Afolabi Olukoju. We're not going to use Tony. I don't know Tony, how Tony has charmed me. All right. So let's say Afolabi. Let's say Afolabi owns a beautiful property, and Afolabi's house, this beautiful mansion, has got an inbuilt car garage. Yeah, beautiful mansion with an inbuilt car garage. Okay. Afolabi is, pocket deep. It's got a lot of money. As a matter of fact, it's got, different kinds of luxury car. And one of them is got Lamborghini. All right. So Afolabi has got Lamborghini. And Afolabi has also got a driveway, or we call it bay here, where you park your car. All right. So you can decide, to park the car at the bay or drive it through into the car garage and All right. Let's say someone else, I'm not going to use any other name now. All right. Let's say someone else is not that as rich as Afolabi. As a matter of fact, the person drives bicycle. All right. But by some reason, he lives in a very big house as well. Maybe inherit the house and all of that, but it drives like a Beetle. If you look at the cost of, Afolabi's car, the Lamborghini will be running into, thousands of pounds. All right. The Beetle will be less expensive. As a matter of fact, if the Beetle stopped working and for some reason, he got stuck on the road and he stopped working, the cost of actually, destroying that Beetle, will be more expensive for the government. All right. In some countries, they will just call the person to come and they will even pay the government to impound the car. All right. So that's just a joke. Okay. But you get what I'm saying? So for Afolabi now, because of the cost of this Lamborghini, Afolabi could decide that, oh yeah, the cost is this X amount. So for that reason, anytime that I'm not driving the car or anytime at home or over the night, I will drive it into the car garage. I will lock up my car garage. So the car garage for Afolabi, for example, is a control, physical control, to further protect that asset Lamborghini. All right. But you see, because of the cost, all right. So because of the cost, I mean, among other things, maybe the cost and also the threat, to the car and where Afolabi lives, it will put it in the car garage, it will lock it up. All right. But you see, to someone that drives a Beetle, maybe that lives in the same or similar property, the Beetle, let's say the Beetle is less than like 5p or £5, all right. That's a bit of exaggeration anyway. All right. That Beetle is not expensive. All right. So the person can't even be bothered. Even if they have a car garage, he won't go and take the Beetle and put it in the car garage. All right. But the effort to open the car garage up, and put the Beetle there and open the car garage up and take the Beetle out every other day, it outweighs, all right, the cost of that car. Okay, please follow me. All right. I'm building something here. It outweighs the cost of that car. So sometimes when you're trying to fix a problem, all right, you will look at the cost and the benefit. Okay, so this is where vulnerability management comes in. So when you have done all of your scanning and you come back with humongous report, all right, so there will be a whole lot of elimination method where you are eliminating what to fix and what to not to fix. So now you're trying to balance, all right, the risk, the cost, and also the benefit. The risk, the cost, and also the benefit. All right. So if the risk is low, all right, if the risk is low, it does not make sense, all right, to fix that problem, especially if the cost is high. But if the risk is high, all right, and the cost of fixing, all right, that vulnerability is also high as well, then organization would make a decision, all right, they would make a decision on the back of that, all right. I'm still going to teach you about a few other things, around, yeah, let me not go there now, but you use those 3 criteria to balance what to do at all time. And this is where vulnerability management comes in. All right. The risk, all right, the cost of fixing the vulnerability and the benefit to the organization. These are the sort of questions that are asked at this level. All right. Whether to, remediate, whether to mitigate, or to tolerate the vulnerability. When we say we tolerate the vulnerability, we accept the vulnerability and the risk that comes with it. This is all being discussed in vulnerability management. But you see, in vulnerability management, you cannot, as a vulnerability management specialist, you can't make that decision. This is where you now start to engage, with people. So a lot of times when you're applying for this type of roles, they are not looking for someone that can just click and click and click away and do a scanning. They're looking for someone that understands vulnerability assessment, someone that can slice and dice the report, someone that can also engage stakeholders as well and explain the findings, and engage them at that level, to decide what to eliminate. So to decide what to remediate, what to mitigate, and also what to tolerate. Are you guys following me? Please, let me know if this is making sense. I'm just trying to explain what the difference between assessment, scanning. Is this making sense to you guys? Is this making sense to you guys? Yes or no? Okay, I'm not getting any. Okay, it's making sense. Okay. Okay, all right. Thank you for that. So the decision will not be based on what I mentioned earlier on, the risk, the cost, and also the benefit as well. The risk and cost and also the benefit as well to the organization. All right. So what is vulnerability management, which is part of audit? So you would assess, assessment, what the asset is, you want to analyze, all right? You're doing all of that in the course of the assessment. Then remediation, all right? So remediation is one thing that, is what make vulnerability management, all right? Because before you can scan an asset, you must first identify the asset, all right? Okay? Before you can, when you carry out an assessment of an asset, you're actually analyzing the report. But in management, you're deciding what to do, to fix the problem. And that is where, the remedial work comes in. All right? I hope that makes sense. Let's now talk about some of the challenges, to effective vulnerability management. So if I've mentioned, I've mentioned earlier that one of the things that you take, one of the criteria that helps you to determine what to do, risk, cost of fixing vulnerability, and also benefit to that organization. You would agree with me that for an organization to come into terms on what to do, there would be a whole lot of challenge. So what are those challenges? Those are the things that I want to talk to you about. So these are few challenges. Number one, traditional desktop scanner cannot handle large network. All right. So in fact, there's a lot of traditional, nobody uses traditional desktop anymore. It's all been thrown into the sea. All right. Volumes of useless checks. All right. Chopping up scan and distributing them is awesome. This is the real deal. That's one of the challenge. Remember, Ens had asked the question earlier on that who is here that understand, that know how to use Excel or Power BI. All right. When you're dealing with large volumes of record, it can be cumbersome. It can be cumbersome. I don't know about you. For anyone that's used Excel before, Excel, when you're using Excel and you have certain amount of record, the problem with Excel is it starts breaking. Can anybody attest to that? Like Excel will not be able to undo a large volume. It starts literally just breaking and you can be there. Then your computer, because of the amount of intense, memory usage, all right, if you understand how computer works, it swaps the information, put it in the memory, and most times you're doing the analysis from the memory, not from the Excel itself, all right? So if you have a slow computer, most organizations, they will give you a standard computer anyway. It's because it's quite resource intensive, then you would have a challenge. Because it's quite resource intensive, then you would have a challenge. You know what I'm saying? You would have a challenge, and you will not be able to, your computer is slow, is hanging and all of that. This is what I'm talking about, because I'm telling you that, so that's why this is not about reading slides to you. I'm just telling you the real issue. So when you say chop off, scan, and distribute them is cumbersome. Chopping it up is the example of when you have a large record. When you have a small record, you don't have a problem with Excel. Don't use Power BI. If it's a small record, just use Excel because it's easy. All right. Distribution can also be a major issue as well. And what do I mean by that? All right. So in some organizations, they will say, oh, send it to this person, send it to this person, send it to that person. And sometimes if you have multiple stakeholders, sending a large Excel file does not make sense. Okay, so you have to summarize your report, before you can engage, the customer. Time consuming, absolutely, and resource intensive as well. So when I say resource intensive, not human resource intensive on your compute resource, it can be quite intensive as well. Time consuming in the sense that the time that you will use, to be able to slice and dice a report, chop them up, it can take the whole of your life. Finding the problem is half the battle. Absolutely. Actually finding, the vulnerability is just one thing. You also have to deal with false positives in some cases as well. Let's move on. So analysis. So we've talked about assessment. Analysis now is manual and resource intensive process to determine what to fix, if you should fix them, and when to fix them. This is this is another issue. So you would engage, you would be involved in so many meetings, right, where decisions will be made. And sometimes when those decisions are made, most stakeholders are not being objective, all right. They don't ask the question of, like I said earlier, what is the risk, what is the cost of fixing this, and what is the benefit to the organization. And these are some of the things that you can bring on bring into a conversation. You bring fresh life into the conversation. Well, if you're working with sensible people, to be honest, it must be around those three criteria, all right, when you're making a decision on what to do, all right. What is the risk to the organization, all right? What is the risk to the organization? All right, you just went over my head now. What is the risk to the organization, the cost of fixing the vulnerability, and the next one is the benefit to the organization. If you have that at hand, maybe it would help you, with making a decision quite quickly. Or an interview question could be, oh, we have a challenge in our organization. We can't come, can't kind of come together, to decide how to fix our problem. What do you think we should do? All right, what do you think? They wanted to engage you. All right, then don't just say you should fix this. All right, you could start to talk about, all right, so this is how we would do it. First, we'll first ascertain what the risk is, to the organization. If we're able to ascertain that, then again, how soon can we fix it? What is the cost? All right, and what are the benefits? Then, those are management. Vulnerability management is pretty much around having conversation. All right, you don't just go there and say, oh, this is the answer. No, it's all about. Every organization is unique, so you have to be ready to have sensible conversation with your stakeholder. No correlation between vulnerability threat, no way to prioritize what vulnerability should be addressed. Yes, that's some of the issue that you would have. How do you prioritize them? Though I gave you an example earlier on that you could prioritize based on vulnerability age, you could prioritize based on the severity, you could also prioritize based on the exploit code in the wild. All right, sometimes you deal with stale data, all right, making decision on last quarter vulnerability. That's one of the challenge of some vulnerability management scanner. Qualys could have this problem when you are dealing with stale data. All right, stale data is if you work in a dynamic environment. When I say dynamic environment, you have assets in the cloud. You would agree with me that if you have 10 assets in the cloud today, because maybe your developer, they have a development environment where they do, most of their work. They spin up, asset, quite often. They will spin up a VM, they will spin up a scanner, they will develop, software, they put it in the scanner and in a container, sorry. They'll put it in a container. They do all of that quite often, especially when the project is ongoing. So all of those assets that they are using at part-time, they are not temporal. They are not permanent, they are temporal. All right, because it's a project. What after some time, they've done the project, or they've done the proof of concept. Most times they don't come back, to tell, and this is where the asset reconciliation comes in. They don't come back to tell you as the vulnerability scanner or expert, as the vulnerability management expert, that, oh yeah, that environment, we've shut it down, we're no longer using it. That's another major challenge, because there's a communication barrier or breakdown, a communication gap between, between maybe your IT team, and IT team could be, guys working in the cloud environment, and yourself, because like I said, if there's a project, they spin up different a VM, which is virtual machine, they use it, but they don't come back to you. So perhaps you'll be scanning an asset that's no longer in use. That's where the stale data comes in. You'll be scanning an asset that's no longer in use. So you can understand the gap that is there. All right, so vulnerability management can be quite interesting, but I'm giving you all of this information firsthand because I've done it before. I know what the problem is. But the good thing is some scanner, all right, they've been programmed like Qualys. You could actually set it up, to help you to determine, or to find stale data or stale asset. All right, so Qualys could do that, where it's constantly carrying a scan, to identify whether some data are old or whether an asset is no longer being used, and you can purge, those assets from, your asset record, so that the Qualys or the scanner will no longer scan them. All right, then you don't have a lot of false data in your record. All right, is this making sense? I don't know if I've kind of lose you there. Is it still helping? Is it still helping? I don't know. We're going into some complex stuff, so I'm not sure if people are still here. Okay, all right, but so you understand when I gave the example of the stale data, I'm talking about cloud now, and cloud, how it's being used, communication gap between those using the cloud environment, especially when the project work is being done, and yourself that you're carrying out the scan. All right, there's a communication gap. So a lot of times, if you do not know how to identify what is not being used, or that is decommissioned, if you do not know it, then you would have a whole lot of fake or false information in your report, when you do your scan. All right, so these are just real life problem. Okay, remediation challenge: security posture are often decentralized. The security organization, that's true as well. The security organization often does not own the network or the system. This is a major challenge. This is a major challenge. And the point there is, you would identify the problem. So remediation can be a major problem. The reason is because when you do not have the buy-in, of the asset owner, it becomes a problem. Because in one hand, you have the problem that you have identified. On the other hand, nobody is willing to accept the risk. Not even accept the risk. They are not even willing, to sponsor the remediation work. Sponsoring the remediation work could just simply means that, all right, we get somebody on board, that is skilled in that area, they can deploy a code, they can deploy a patch, or they can change the configuration. All right, so that could be a major problem. And see, what I'm showing you today is this is what they ask in interview. I'm telling you, nobody will come and tell me vulnerability management. They don't ask them, what are the challenge? They have a problem. That's the reason why they wanted to hire you. So the more you know about some of this problem, the more you are employable. So this thing that I'm showing you is very, very important. So I did not just put my slide together because I want to talk about, I'm putting it together because based on experience. All right. Multiple group may own an asset. That's another one. All right. So if you have more than one owner for an asset, then to fix the problem, it's a problem because it's a challenge, because the owners will not be able to make a decision. Let me give you an example. What do I mean that multiple group will own an asset? Think about Amazon, www.amazon.com. All right. So that is a web application. Is that correct? Please talk back to me. I just want to feel your pulse. Someone says too many IT jargons, a bit lost. It's not jargons. I warn you from where we've moved away from the foundation now. We're coming into the real thing. And if you're going to make vulnerability management something that you want to do, unfortunately, my dear, you have to learn it. So they are not, well, you call it jargons, but that's just the reality. You have to be able to speak and talk the talk. All right. So everything I'm saying to you here, there are things, if you want to do vulnerability management, you have to learn it. All right. You have to learn it. And I'm not saying that you will get it in the, if you've not been, done this before, I'm not saying you will get it in the first go. You have to listen to the video again, watch it, and do a whole lot before you can get it. All right. Okay. What am I talking about? I'm talking about multiple group owning an asset. So let me take you back. So if you think about Amazon, www.amazon.co.uk. So that is, a URL, what we call a link. All right. So that link is what you browse when you want to go to Amazon and shop. All right. So you see that link, is a web application. That web application is an asset. Application is an asset, all right? But you see that asset, it is living, all right, on a web server. So a web server could be a physical server or it could be a virtual machine, all right? So it is living there. But you see that web server, all right, there would be an underlying operating system, okay? There will be an underlying operating system. The underlying operating system could be, it could be Linux, all right? It could be Microsoft. It could be Microsoft running IIS, all right? It could be Linux running Apache, okay? All right? So you can see three things I've not mentioned there. The web application, all right? The web server, all right? Then we also have, the operating system, all right? So three things. But do you know in most organizations, three different stakeholders can actually own those three assets? Or two, worst case scenario. Someone would own the web application, the application itself. You would have another person or a group of people that would own the web server and the underlying operating system. All right. So if that is the case, if you find a vulnerability on the web application, all right, for example, the web application has got a vulnerability called SQL injection. All right. So let's say that is the case. And you want to fix that vulnerability. So you see, the owner of the web application will not just go and say, all right, go and fix the SQL injection. Don't forget that the web application lives on the web server, and that web server is sitting on an underlying operating system. So you have to get the buy-in of the two other stakeholders or owner before you can fix that problem. So this is where we call the multiple group may own the asset. All right, is this making sense? Is this making sense? I don't know if it's making sense, Jacob. All right, so you understand the concept of that multiple group, okay? So because these are just real challenge, that is there. All right, so and I'm telling you all of this real challenge so that when you go there, you can have a proper conversation. All right. The other one is presenting useful and meaningful information to the relevant stakeholder. Absolutely. All right. This is another one. All right. So you can imagine millions of records. You have to make sure that you summarize it. All right. For me, I've worked in a place where I was reporting directly to the CISO. On every fortnight, I have to present a report to the CISO, telling the CISO about summary, okay, of all of the findings, okay? So I have to make it meaningful, okay? I have to, I wish, not this training, maybe other training, we'll just show you a few other things. You will be able to use your PowerPoint, put it in a nice pivot chart, or pie chart, represent it, show the CISO, or the CISO office, a kind of the overall security posture of your organization. So you have to make your report meaningful. Some of you might be thinking, this thing is too much. No, I'm not saying that you will be. So when I say I work at that level, I didn't get there at that level. All right. I was once somebody that was just doing the scan. Someone else was doing the reporting, but as you grow in your career, then obviously, start to have more responsibility. All right. That's another one. Meaningful presentation of your report. Poor communication between teams, absolutely. So there might be a communication gap between you and the IT team. Don't forget that the IT team, they're usually responsible for fixing the vulnerability. But if you have your communication between both of you are poor, then that could be a major challenge as well. Determining if fix was actually made, a lot of challenge. So let's move on quickly. I'm conscious of the time. I know it's already 9 o'clock. I will take another 10 minutes, then we'll be done for today. All right, so time could also be a major challenge. Time between when you identify the vulnerability and when you're actually fixing it. Remember, we talked about zero-day attack. Guys, remember yesterday when we talked about the log 4JS, all right? So you identify the vulnerability, it's a 0 day, and everybody's running around, trying to fix it. So this could be a major challenge as well. They will tell you, and this is very true with zero-day attack. The problem, especially if the exploit code is in the white. What do I mean? What do I mean by that? Sometimes something can be vulnerable, but to exploit that vulnerability, nobody knows. Okay, you have a weakness, but nobody has come to terms, or nobody can say, all right, this is the way that we can actually exploit that vulnerability. All right. Okay, so when we say exploit code is in the wild, what we're saying is there is a known vulnerability, though there is also the know-how to exploit that vulnerability. So if you have a situation where there's a known vulnerability and how to exploit that vulnerability is the wild, then there's a problem of time. All right, because you're vulnerable and you don't know that anybody can just come and hack you, because what they will use to hack you, the tool is there, is in the wild. Anybody can just go and pick it up. So when we say exploit code in the public, we're just saying the know-how to exploit that vulnerability is in the wild. When we say in the wild, on the internet, anybody can just pick it and come and break it. Let me put it this way. So you have a house, and we know that the door to your house is broken. Okay, but listen, if you and your family only knows that the door that leads into the house is broken, that's fine. It's vulnerable. But see, you will become you will not be able to sleep, if I put it that way. If you know that your neighbor know that your door is broken, you won't be able to sleep. I don't know about you guys. Sometimes, maybe you are home and all of a sudden you remember that I didn't lock the door to the front door. All right. Some people will just they will just sleep. You know what I mean? See, they could sleep because nobody knows. But if somebody knows that the door that leads into your property is broken, then of course the way you will react will be different. This is where the time challenge comes in. All right, that that they can steal from you or they can exploit it. Then you now start to see how to mitigate it. All right, hence where they exploit. Another time challenge, like we said, is the criticality of the asset as well. All right. So here we're talking about criticality of the asset and the time and the exploit code. We're also saying here that the criticality of the asset, but you could see here, what is different here is, the discovery, the vulnerability discovery, the exploit code and automatic exploitation, the time has reduced. All right. So what this graph is just depict for us is saying, on one hand, the asset is important, it's critical. On the other hand, it is a race against time if the exploit code is in the wild. If the time, so this one is different because you can look at it. All right, discovery and remediation is long. All right, because of when the vulnerability was discovered, and the time that the exploit code is in the wild and when it becomes automated. This one is different because it is compressed here in this case now, because between the time that it is discovered and the remediation is compressed because the exploit code, or the automatic exploit time is also reduced as well. Then we have the last one here, which again, very similar criticality, the time of exploit is also compressed as well. So the point that we're trying to make here is, this is a major challenge in most organizations, especially, when we're talking about that, the idea about zero-day attack. All right. If the zero-day attack is there and nobody knows how to exploit it, then yeah, maybe you will not worry too much. All right. You can say, yeah, we can still leave this to tomorrow and go and, have a nice sleep and see if we can fix it or get a patch, from the vendor. All right. But the moment, it becomes known that, wow, this can be broken, then that's a major problem. All right. So I think it makes sense for us to stop here. I don't want to go beyond the 2 hours, even though we have a lot to cover, but I will stop here. All right, Alex, are you there, or your noise background is still noisy? I want to see if there are any questions, or do you want us to take another 10 minutes? It's up to you guys. Do you want us to go up to 10:30? I have, sorry, 9:30. If you can you accommodate another 10 minutes? Yeah, we'll come back to your question, Tony. Can we, just general, can you accommodate another 10 minutes? Anybody? So Ade says, why not? Yes, Patrick. 10 more minutes, please. Okay, Jacob, 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes. Okay, all right. Let's do 10 more minutes. Then we'll stop exactly at 9:30. Okay. I do apologize for anybody that's, your bedtime is now. All right. I'm just joking. All right. Well, let's just do another 10 minutes. All right. So in this section, I'll be showing you the relationship between vulnerability testing, software and software development lifecycle. We already talked about software development lifecycle earlier. Some of you would come across software testing. Some of you must have come across software testing background. So you're familiar, with testing software, all right? But for the benefit of those who are new to this concept, I will be quick in explaining the SDLC, all right? We know what that SDLC is. We just have to move quickly. All right, so what it is anyway. So SDLC refers to methodologies, a methodology for clearly defining the process for creating high quality software. So whether it's a mobile application or a web application, software development lifecycle, help is a defined process. What you will do first, what will follow up until the time that you deploy the application. So those are the steps there. It's got about few steps: requirement analysis. So if you have come from a business analysis background or you've done any project management work around software, maybe this will make a whole lot of sense to you. It follows by planning, software design, such as architectural design, software development, testing. You can see that I purposely, colored that one, then deployment. All right. So while, this training is not all about software development, all right, I just wanted to point your attention, to the second to the last phase, in the software development lifecycle, which is testing. All right, that is where I am going to. If you have ever worked with software developers, their focus, particularly in this area, is they will test the functionality of the software. All right, so they will test whether, so if the application is all about submitting a form, they will test whether you could click on submit, to submit a form. If it's all about authenticating, maybe to the website, they will test whether when you put your username and password and you click submit, the system would authenticate you. So those are just examples, of different functions that an application will perform. And software testers, they focus more on that. All right, but that is not what we are here for. We're pretty much going to be talking about, the security testing of an application, whether a mobile application or a web application. But you see, like I said earlier on, the modern way, or the modern day, the way applications are built is different, because most of our application that we build now, you also build it to be cloud native as well. What is cloud native? It just simply means that you want to take that application, whack it into the cloud. All right. There are multi-cloud as well. Maybe you wanted to put it on a public cloud like Amazon, you want to put it on AWS, or you want to put it, wanted to put it on AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, or any other private cloud. All right. So modern day software development is different from what, the way we used to do it. Hence, this continuous integration and continuous delivery, becomes important again. So CI-CD is the backbone of all modern software, development. It allows organizations to develop and also to deploy software quickly and also efficiently. It offers a unified kind of platform, to integrate all aspects of software development life cycle, including using a separate tool, using a separate platform, ability, for developers to develop the product from different parts of the world. So you can have someone in Hong Kong, developing a module or a part of the software. You could have another person developing another part of the application, and you could have the third developer developing another part of the application, and they will take all of their code, they will bring it together into what we call the code, repository. in a place, and they will merge all of that code together until that application becomes one. And if you're going to do that, in this modern day, then you would have a need, for the continuous integration and also the continuous, delivery. All right. So what this actually does is, it introduces what we call automation and monitoring into software development life cycle. All right. What that also means is continuous integration can be considered the first step of the pipeline where the application code is integrated, all right, and also built. So I gave you the idea of, having a multiple developer in a different location, developing, developing or looking to develop, an application. Each of them have different, part of, development that they're doing, and they're integrating it together. So the CI and CD would help you to do that. But the first phase of it, would be the integration and the build. The continuous delivery is the second stage of the delivery pipeline, where the application is deployed to the production environment to be utilized by the end user. All right. So two phase of it, the CI and the DS, and these are called pipelines. All right. So what is a pipeline? A pipeline is a workflow. I'm taking you into something that is a bit complex, but like I said, this would help you. Some of you here that values what I'm teaching, some of you that be like, wow, this is really, really good. But I understand that maybe a few others, you're not there at that level, all right, that I'm teaching. And I've given a whole lot of examples. I've made it simple for you. I'm not saying that you will get it, and then the first goes. Give me a sec, guys. Sorry, my stakeholder was here, making a request. My senior stakeholder. All right, my son. All right, so I understand. Okay, so you have to listen to this, again, to get it. Okay, so let me just check the time. I have 10 more minutes. Okay, so what is a pipeline? Pipeline is a workflow, all right, that creates an integrated end-to-end process encompassing all of the stages of the software development lifecycle to develop the software efficiently in a timely manner. So you see all the software development lifecycle that I showed you earlier on. If I take you back. All of these, stages, you can develop a pipeline that would include all of those, particularly, for the modern software development. All right, you will now develop, you will create a pipeline. There is the standard, traditional pipeline. There is also the, well, maybe the modern day pipeline. All right, I'm going to show you a few of that. But you see, the standard one, which is the basic level pipeline, will contain all of these stages, all right, which is not different from the software development lifecycle. It will contain the development stage, the code review, and the acceptance stage. This is the traditional way of building the software. All right, it would have the build stage, it would have the testing stage, it would also have the development stage as well. All right. So whilst this is not, a software development training, all right, everything I'm going to be teaching you is still going to point to the testing. All right, it's important I say that. But you see, you cannot have a proper conversation, with prospective employers, as a vulnerability management specialist or a security testing analyst. You may not be able to have proper conversation if you do not have understanding of this background that I'm trying to build. All right. So if you do not understand what pipeline is, then you see, you can't have a proper conversation, because if you end up getting this job as a security tester, all right, you would be working with developers, and everything they're going to be saying, like someone said, technical jargons, they will be saying these jargons. So you have to understand it. All right. You have to understand it. It's important that I mentioned that. So it's also important that, that pipelines are not, these pipelines, which are workflows, they are not only limited to software development. They can also be used in other areas, like database management, and also in infrastructure management as well. So creating a robust pipeline depends on the requirement of the user. So the point that we're trying to make here is you can customize your pipeline, all right, as long as it follows the standard, is customizable. All right. So what you see here is a traditional pipeline, a workflow. All right. How you would develop an application to the point that you test them and also deploy them as well. All right. But no, this is not supposed to take that. So this is a typical pipeline or workflow. So you can see here that I have development, I have build, I have test, and I also have here, automate, you can automatically deploy the code or you deploy the application into your production environment. The good thing is, for us in smart learning, we're not just only a training organization, we're also a consulting firm as well. So we have, developers that do piece of work for me, so they develop, different kind of application, and we follow this process. We have an environment called Oracle. In that environment is where we deploy, we do all of our, we have different environment. We have the staging environment, we have the pre-prod, we also have the production environment as well. So we have this pipeline that you can see here, where we develop, where we build, where we now test. So we have a software tester that will test it. We also carry out security testing as well up until the time that we deploy. So it's important that you understand, or this workflow here, each stages, but there are different activities that happens here. Why you will not be involved in development as a tester, all right, but you must understand what each of the stages is and the activity that is going on in each of those stages. So all above these stages are continually monitored for any errors and quickly notify to the relevant party. So there's a continuous monitoring that's going on in each of the stages up until the time that it is deployed. So if you see there, the CD is where the deployment is happening. All right, the CI is where the development, where the deployment is happening. That is the CD. The CI is where you have the development, the build, and also the test as well. All right, so what are the elements of the pipeline? All right, so we have 4 elements there. We have number 1, the development. So I said that the steps that forms a CI, CD pipeline are distinct set of tasks grouped into what is known as a pipeline stage. All right, typical pipeline stage include these things that you see here. So if you notice, the only thing that is different here is what I use release. All right, and like I said, for pipelines, your pipelines can be all of these elements. So you can see here, you can see all of those elements there. But in that, what I'm showing you now, I do not have release there. All right. So it depends. You have the flexibility to create your own pipeline. In some, you may not need to include the release. In others, you might have to include it. As a matter of fact, the assumption that I took here is, the release would have been done, all right, before you even deploy. All right. But in some, when they are creating their pipeline, they may put the release there. But what happens in each of the stages, the development stage is where the development happens. All right, you are developing your care. So for us in our organization, we use Oracle. All right, Oracle is where we do all of our development, and the coding is matched, to a version control repository, and it's also validated. So when we say you match the code, it means that there's more than one person that is working on that development part time. All right, they can bring their code. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're creating a web app, and that web app would have a functionality where you want to authenticate into the system. So that's a functionality. You want to be able to put a username and password. All right. Let's say the same web app would have a functionality where it would be able to, count, where you would be able to log user activity. All right. When you log on into a machine now, the machine should also be able to log the activity. So log the activity in terms of timestamp when a user login, and also timestamp when the user log out. That's another functionality. So you can take the functionality of the authentication and give it to a developer A, all right, and take the functionality of logging all of the activity, and give it to developer B. All right, they can be working independently. all right, because these are requirements that has been given to them. So what we're saying here in development, what you could do is when they do this, you could merge, all of the codes together. All right, you could merge it together. All right, so hence we said here, you could have a version control repository. There will be a repository where that is merged and you can validate them. In the build stage, this is where the code is compiled, all right, built to become an application. You compile all of the code, of course. Compiling is not merging codes together. Compilation is different, of course, there will be tooling that will help you to do the compiling. Testing, this is the stage where the code is tested, all right? The code is deployed in a test environment and extensive tests are carried out to ensure the functionality of the application. You can see again, you're testing the functionality. You're not testing the security, all right? You're testing the functionality. This is where the software tester would be involved, making sure that every functionality that we mentioned, the authentication is working, and also the application is collecting all the necessary log. All right. The release, like I said, is where the application is delivered to the repository. Then the deploy this is the final stage of the pipeline where the test application is deployed to the production environment. All right. But again, the focus here is what do we do as a vulnerability analyst or vulnerability tester in the testing environment? What do we do? All right. So if you're working in a software development environment, what are your responsibility? And that is where I want to focus on. Why each of the stages are important for us to know it, but what is our role and responsibility? I'm conscious of the time. I just have 1 more minute. I will quickly use that 1 more minute. All right. So hold that thought because I'm going to answer that question later. All right. Then so then it's also important for you to know that we have different types of pipeline. Whilst we have the traditional one, which I have showed to you earlier on, which is standard, it would have different stages. We also have what we call the container pipeline. Remember, I was telling you about modern software development. All right, the way we build software now is different from the way we used to build it. As a matter of fact, most of the application, they live in the cloud, and because they live in the cloud, they are also put into what we call a containerized solution. All right, I know it's difficult for you to understand, but listen, I'm giving you something juicy that if you understand this concept, you will never be out of job, and that is the truth. All right. If you come to the one I'm going to have on the 29th, all right, where we're going to be talking about automation in the cloud, some of the things that I've taught you here will make a whole lot of sense to you. All right. So just know that there's something we call container. All right. Container pipe differ from traditional pipes. All right. Pipelines. The main difference is that a container pipeline focus on creating a container and deploying them into an orchestration called likes of Kubernetes or something that we call Docker. Don't really worry about it. Just know that there's something called Kubernetes and there's something also called Docker as well. But you see, your pipeline can either be traditional or it could be a container pipeline. Just know that. Don't bother to know about the details. All right. Your pipeline can either be traditional, just as I've said here. All right. It could also be container pipeline. And this is the example of a container, all right, pipeline. But guess what? Our focus here is pretty much around what is happening in the test. So if you think about that workflow, your focus should be, all right, what am I going to be doing when I'm actually testing the code? And that is where I want to take you to. All right. These are all of the testing stages. All right. When you think about a container pipeline, all right, there is functional test, there is regression test, there is stress test. There is also what we now call security test. All right. Security test now is where you now use your vulnerability scanner to carry out a scan against the application and also, the overall application and the container itself. So a typical container could be Docker. It could also be Kubernetes as well. This is what you're doing. This is what you're going to be doing under the testing stage. So the testing stage will start once the container image is built and the pipeline has deployed the application in the staging area. So what would happen when we take this training, or I have another training that we call application security. All right, we talk about different staging area. And you can learn a lot from that as well for some of you that will sign up for the course. So I think it only makes sense for us to stop here tonight, and we would continue from here tomorrow. All right. So guys, thank you for your time tonight again. I think we did well, showing you a whole lot of stuff. And I believe that you really, really appreciate it with the quality time that I've spent sharing a whole lot of with you. I'm sure that quite a number of you appreciate. So we'll continue here tomorrow. Tomorrow being Friday, we will move quite quickly because we have a lot to cover. So we might have to do about 3 hours tomorrow, okay? If we're going to finish this off tomorrow. So I'm just creating your indulgence, from today, so that when we return tomorrow, I have to finish this training tomorrow, okay? That's the truth. I have to. So please, when you come tomorrow, just brace up, knowing that, we're going to go over 2 hours. We're going to go over 3 hours. But see, what I'm sharing with you, I am really passionate about it. It's what I've done. And I know that when you're skilled up in this area, you cannot go wrong. What our training also offers is we provide end-to-end support. So we're not just going to, show you all of this. You get the opportunity to practicalize it. So everything about this CID, if it's running over your head and you're not able to figure it out, don't worry. All right. In the real training itself, we bring you into our development environment. I have a product manager that will walk you through, what this is all about practically. I have a software developer. I have software developer. I also have software tester as well, that will be able to demonstrate some of these things to you, but more importantly, we also have toolings that we use as well, to test for security vulnerability. Alex is here, carries out a whole lot of work for me. So yeah, exciting time ahead. So I look forward to, seeing you tomorrow. I will stop recording now. Then what I will do is, if you have any question, I would unmute everybody. More than happy to answer your question. And yeah, we'll take you from there. Are you sure you want to